My Grandpa Fisher was a pretty amazing woodworker. He made all kinds of things, from knickknacks to furniture, and then he would typically go to craft fairs and make just enough money to support his hobby. In fact, here's a picture of him winning the blue ribbon for Old Guy Who Pulls His Pants Up the Highest. But as you'd imagine, my grandpa enjoyed sharing his hobby with lots of others, including, of course, my dad, who then went on to develop a passion for woodworking as well. As the years ticked by, my dad shared his knowledge of woodworking with me. Yes, that's me, making rompers look good since 1975. So I'm trying to keep the tradition alive by teaching my son as well, and I'm trying to think of a way how I can say thanks to my dad for all the time he invested in teaching me about this craft. And it was like clockwork that Yode Watches contacted me right out of the blue for just the answer I was looking for. Funny name, huh? It's Swedish, and it's spelled J-O-R-D, but it's pronounced Yode, kind of like how my name is spelled D-R-E-W, but my wife pronounces it Doofus. So, Yode fabricates luxury wooden watches, and they do a phenomenal job at it. I mean, it's not every day that you see a cool watch, let alone an amazing work of art like these things are. Yode reached out to me and wanted to know if I'd be interested in having them sponsor a giveaway for all of you. So, listen up. If you want to own one of these awesome watches, and who wouldn't, here's what you got to do. There's a link down below that leads you to an entry form page. Drop in your name and email, pick your favorite watch, and that's it. During the course of the giveaway, you can use a coupon code DrewFisher and get another $25 off, as well as free engraving. This way you can engrave my name on all of your watches. If you're like me and tricked a girl into marrying you, check out the watches they have for the ladies. It makes a pretty solid gift idea. My wife has one and she absolutely loves it. Yode was also generous enough to send me a watch that I'll be surprising my dad with, so stick around and at the end you'll see which one I give him. To go along with the watch, I wanted to create him something really special. And this is what I came up with. It's a phone and watch valet. It's got a spot where he can charge his phone, put his watch, and even a little tray for spare change, a ring, or other important things. Now, let's go build it. I grabbed some blocks of walnut from my treasure chest, measured to make sure they're big enough, and then flattened one side on the jointer. I went ahead and resawed them in half to get them down to a more manageable sizes, and then I cut off the first strip so that I could tuck in a maple accent. I don't worry about keeping it perfectly flat at this stage, since it'll all get cleaned up later on the planer, but I keep it pretty close. Once the glue is dry, I can clean off one of the ends over at the miter saw, and then I repeat the same process with the board facing the other way to add a perpendicular accent. Now here it is important to make sure you get things lined up just right, otherwise it'll dry crooked and look weirder than Michael Jackson's face after a house fire. Now it's dry and I can shave down the accent strips a bit with a little block plane. And for the pieces of the accent strips that are sticking out, I lop them off with a pole saw so the whole thing will fit into a sled. And here I'm building that planer sled that I'll use while I flatten this. The purpose of this is to create sacrificial extensions that will take any and all snipe so that my project piece will be perfectly flat once it comes out of the planer. Then as I pass it through, I check the measurement with my calipers until I get it to just the right thickness. And once I get it looking good, I have shop buddy number 1 inspect it for me. Okay. Let's see how this turned out, bud. You want to pull it out of there?
Yeah.
Wow. Is it nice and smooth?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Both sides.
That looks nice. I like this side for the top, don't you? Because I like all these big grain.
Yeah, but what's some of those? But those are like, I like this better because it's kind of smooth at the start, like not so bumpy. But this one's like,
Yeah.
I don't really like that.
Now I can cut down the base to its final dimensions and get ready to route out the tray. To do that, I made a guide frame out of some scrap wood that had scaled up dimensions of the tray I was carving out. Then I used double-sided tape to stick my project piece down to the surface. I placed the guide frame over the top of it and lined it up just right. Then I just drilled and screwed the frame straight into the bench so that it wouldn't move. I'm not sure if it's the best method, but it's all my brain could think of. So if you have a better way of doing this, leave me a comment below. It did seem to work though. Now I could take the frame off and then pry the base up off the bench top, and then this piece was complete. On to making the watch stand. I start by squaring the end of the other piece of walnut and then trimming off a 2-inch piece of it on the table saw. Using the bandsaw, I cut an end-grained block that I'll use. And with the crosscut sled and a stop block, I cut 4 channels into it where I'll put all of my accent pieces. But to get maple strips to fit, I have to use my thin strip jig and rip down a piece so it's the same thickness as the kerf of the table saw blade. Here I'm doing some freestyle one-handed bandsaw cutting, and now I can stick all the splines in. Once they're dry, I trim off the excess on the bandsaw, and then I clean things up over on the disc sander. Now we're ready to make the phone holder. I start by cleaning up one of the edges of the leftover walnut and cutting it to the proper height. Next, I find the prettiest section of the grain and I mark where I want the edges to be. Once I had that figured out, I just trim it down to size. The last little bit of walnut that I cut will be for the ledge that the phone sits on. I measure the thickness of the charging cable and transfer those marks onto the piece, and then I take it over to the bandsaw and cut it out. Doing some testing to make sure it all fits, and then I glue them down and set it off to dry. Once it's good, I can do the last bit of cutting and make 2 more channels for some decorative splines. And just like with my dog, I know when I've squeezed it too hard because stuff will start to leak out. So I trim off the excess, sand it flush, and then the phone cradle piece is finished. Next I'm laying out where I'll be drilling all the holes for the supports. Once I got my mark, I punch a tiny hole with my awl and take things over to the drill press. Using a 1/4-inch bit, I carefully drill a hole in the phone cradle, the watch holder, and then I put 2 more holes into the base. Everything gets a final sanding, and now I can mask off the pieces and get them ready for epoxy. My wife recently bought a bunch of chairs for our basement from a Swedish furniture store that also sells meatballs. You know you're in a quality furniture store when they also sell meatballs. Each chair came with an Allen wrench, so I'm using a couple of them for our supports. I use my angle grinder to roughen up the edges so that the epoxy will have something to bite onto and keep things from getting loose over time. Then I squeeze out a little bit of this 5-minute magic and mix it up. I put a couple of drops down into the holes and then use the vise to press the Allen wrenches into them for a real snug fit. Once I got the phone and watch holders done and they were dry, I repeat the same process for the base. I tape it off, drop in some epoxy, and then press in the pieces, making little adjustments here and there to keep them straight and level. Next, I taped off the wrenches and began spraying on some light coats of finish, and then between coats I sanded everything down to 500. When it was all dry, I could cut off the masking tape, and then the very last bit was to apply some rubber feet. Man, it turned out awesome. I love it. Now, let's go give it to my dad. Well, this is a gift from Yode Watches. They make wooden watches, wooden luxury watches, and they wanted you to have this.
They don't know me. Yeah. Oh, wow. Dude, this is fantastic.
Isn't it beautiful?
Fantastic.
But I got one more thing for you. So let me go get that and I'll be right back.
What is this going to be?
Alright, so this is something that I made. You know, you can put your phone here and then your watch here, and then any spare change or whatever can go right in that little tray there. And this is all walnut with maple accents.
Where did you learn all this?
I wonder where I learned it all. What do you think?
I think, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Wow. You're going to have to educate me on these little dials. There are 3 of them. Tachometer.
Yeah, it's a tachometer, a speedometer, and an odometer. Those are your 3 dials.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's even prettier than I thought. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. It blew out the back piece. Kind of figured that was going to happen. I gotta put it the other way. What? I squirt out like a thimble full, and literally, it's everywhere. How does that even happen? Not going in there. Quick, get to the vise. I'm stuck on something. Won't go. I think it's stuck right on this ledge here. Yeah.
It's warm.
What are you doing over there?
I'm setting up some dominoes.